Get on your knees, boy. That's what the cop barked right there in the middle of the courtroom. The shove came fast, the crack of my shoulder against the hard wooden bench louder than it should have been. For a split second, the whole room froze, lawyers, clerks, even the judge. And me, I didn't move. I just stood there, tall still, steady, letting him think he had me under his thumb. He didn't know yet who he was touching. See, I wasn't some random defendant dragged in off the street. I wasn't guilty of anything. My only crime was speaking up one sentence, calm, respectful. Sir, with respect, that's not what happened. That was enough for him. Officer Roy Patterson, white, broad-shouldered, and so sure of his authority, he thought it meant truth. He pressed down on my shoulder like he owned me, sneering. You people never learn when to keep quiet. You people. That phrase, it wasn't new to me. I'd heard it in different forms my whole life, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted. But coming from a man in uniform in a courtroom that was supposed to be sacred ground, it burned. My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. Because silence isn't always weakness, it's strategy. The thing nobody in that room knew was that my silence had been forged in far harsher places. I had dragged bleeding teammates through Afghan valleys with bullets chewing the dirt at our heels. I had cleared tunnels under Mosul in the dark, knives and fists, my only weapons. I had taken a round to the ribs in Syria and refused morphine until every hostage was on the chopper. I was trained to measure, to wait, to choose my strike. And that day I chose silence, until he reached for me again. You think you can talk back here? Patterson's voice was sharp, cracking with something more than anger. It was entitlement. What got nothing to say now. I turned my head, slow and deliberate, locked eyes with him and whispered, You don't know who I am, he laughed. You're about to be in holding, that's all I need to know. His hand shot toward my arm again. And that right there, that was his mistake. I moved the way I'd been trained, pivot low shoulder, out one swift twist to the hips. His weight lifted, his body flipped, and before anyone could blink, Patterson was flat on his back, gasping for air, the courtroom echoing with gasps and a woman's scream. The judge slammed his gavel, shouting, but the sound barely cut through the chaos. I stood over him, calm, balanced, no gloating, just steady. He laid hands on me again. I said, voice flat. I neutralized the threat. Nobody breathed. The prosecutor's pen had rolled off the desk, frozen where it landed. Even the other bailiffs hesitated. They saw it too. This wasn't rage. This was control. Miss, the judge stammered, what is your occupation? I didn't answer at first. Instead, I reached beneath my collar, pulled out the small, tarnished trident I'd kept hidden. Not a badge, not a medal, but the symbol of where I'd been and who I was. Dead silence. Lieutenant Commander Maya Harris, I said evenly. United States Navy SEAL, retired. Bronze Star with Valor. Purple Heart. And I'm not your enemy. You could feel the air shift in that room. Patterson's smirk drained off his face, replaced by pale panic. Because suddenly I wasn't just a loud black woman. I wasn't a defendant. I was a war hero, and the system had just tried to grind me down like I was nothing. But the truth is, I hadn't even been there for myself. 3 days earlier, I'd been standing by the elevator with a nervous 15-year-old named Andre Coleman. Skinny kid's sleeves stretched from tugging eyes too old for his age. He kept saying, I didn't do it. I never touched that bike. I believed him. I'd seen it happen. Another kid, white, took off on that bike while Andre was across the street. But when you're black and poor in this city, your word isn't evidence. That's why I was there. I wasn't his lawyer, just a volunteer advisor for a nonprofit that helps kids swallowed by the system. I'd seen too many like Andre chewed up before they even had a chance to speak. His mom was there, too exhausted from double shifts, still showing up for her boy. I promised him I'd make sure he got heard, but Patterson blocked me at the door. Supporters sit in the gallery, he said flatly. I'm a witness. My name's on the list. He grinned without humor. Not on my list, gallery. I have a right to sit with my client until the court rules otherwise. "You're not a lawyer." He stepped closer, breath sour with coffee. I said gallery. I could feel Andre looking back at me, worried, scared. I wanted to push past Patterson, but I didn't. Not yet. I'd learned to let people like him show themselves first. So I sat in the gallery and I watched. I watched as grainy footage was twisted into proof. I watched as the rookie public defender fumbled over objections. I watched Patterson lean back smug against the wall like he'd done this 100 times. And I waited. That's the thing about systems like this, they count on silence. They count on nobody fighting back. But I wasn't built that way. Later, when Patterson tried to silence me again in court, I'd had enough. And when he put his hands on me, I gave him exactly what he asked for. Of course, the system hit back quick. He filed a report calling me combative. I got a notice of temporary courtroom ban slipped under my door. It was slick efficient, like they'd practiced burying people like me for years. But they forgot one thing: someone was watching. Rebecca Crane, an attorney sitting in the back, had seen everything. And another parent had caught it all on video. The shove, the slur, the takedown. When that footage leaked, everything changed. By evening, my phone was blowing up. Clips all over the news: veteran drops officer in courtroom. Some called me dangerous. Others called me disciplined. A former SEAL instructor even went on TV and said, "That's what restraint looks like. That's what we teach." Then the skeletons started falling out of Patterson's closet. An old video surfaced him slamming a Latino teenager against a hood years back. The boy Diego Alvarez, now grown, came forward trembling but firm. I was just walking home from work. I told him that. He didn't care. My skin said something louder than my words. And then the real crack in the wall: a young black officer named Marcus Bell. He stepped up to a microphone, shaking but steady, and admitted he had helped cover Patterson's lies. I told myself I was protecting the badge, he said, but really I was protecting the lie. That hit like a thunderclap. Suddenly it wasn't just my word, it was proof, witnesses, Patterson's history. The system couldn't bury it anymore. Patterson was suspended, then indicted for misconduct and falsifying reports. For the first time, he had to answer questions, and the mask slipped. On national TV, he muttered, "I don't think I'm a bad man. I just did what I was trained to believe was right." That line cut deeper than anything. Because it wasn't just about him, it was about the whole damn system that trained him to believe force was truth. Meanwhile, Andre's case quietly fell apart. Charges dropped, judge admitting procedural issues. I watched his mom sob and hug her boy outside the courtroom. She turned to me, voice trembling. "I prayed someone would see my son." "You did." Was that victory? Maybe. But it didn't feel like it. Because I knew one case, one suspension, one viral clip. None of that fixed the machine. The machine keeps grinding. These days, I keep showing up. Not in uniform, not with medals, just me watching. I sit in the back of courtrooms. I stand outside when mothers plead for their kids. Sometimes people recognize me, whisper my name. Sometimes a little boy tugs his mom's hand and asks, "Is she a hero?" And I hear the answer: "I prefer no, baby. She's just brave." Because being brave is harder. It means you don't get to disappear. It means you stay, you watch, you refuse to vanish into silence. And that's where I'll leave it with you, because I'm not the only one who's seen this. Maybe you've been in a room where power tried to smother the truth. Maybe you've stayed quiet because you thought silence was safer. So tell me, what would you have done in that courtroom? Was I right to fight back, or should I have swallowed it like so many before me? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just my story, it's ours. And maybe if enough of us speak, the system will finally have to listen.